I'm in my kitchen and I'm going to cook a steak. I'm going to show you how I do it. A lot of people aren't super confident on this and it's actually really easy, so here we go. Alright, in my opinion, one of the most important parts of cooking a steak actually happens before you cook it. Take that sumbitch out of the fridge at least an hour before it hits the pan. The reason for that is if you put a cold, or heaven help you, frozen steak directly onto the heat, you have almost a 0% chance of cooking it properly. And please don't worry about this from a food safety standpoint. I sometimes will let my steaks come up to room temperature for 2 or 3 hours. Any bacteria on the surface of this steak is going to be instantly destroyed when it hits the high heat, so don't worry. This is approximately 20-ounce New York strip steak. I'm not going to eat the whole thing. This is probably 2 meals for me. And what I'm about to teach you goes for strip steak or ribeye or T-bone or whatever cut you happen to enjoy. While it's coming up to room temperature, we're going to douse it liberally in either kosher salt or coarse sea salt. Don't use fine table salt. Use kosher salt or coarse sea salt. I mean, I guess you could use table salt. It's obviously better than no salt. But if you're using table salt, just don't be quite so generous with it because table salt is actually saltier than kosher salt or sea salt. And make sure you get the fatty side too. And you can just push it in there. I don't pepper my steaks. I'm going to show you momentarily how the other way I get some seasoning in there. But through the miracle of osmosis, this is going to draw some moisture out of the surface and lead to a better sear. So this looks not super delicious, but it is melted butter mixed with crushed garlic and cracked black pepper. And this is going to be used to baste the steak later when it's almost done. This is a really good hack because both garlic and pepper can burn. So you don't want to put them on the steak from the get-go because they can burn and then they don't taste good. But if you mix them in with your butter, you're going to get that flavor. You add it at the end and it's perfect. Also, this is optional, okay? This is what I do when I'm going the extra mile and want to make it really special. Steak is fucking delicious with just salt and a good sear on it, all right? So if you don't want to do this, don't worry about it. Time to start preheating the pan. You can use stainless steel or cast iron. I'm going to use cast iron. Do not use nonstick. Doesn't work. If you don't have a cast iron pan, get one. They're cheap and they're really good. So you can preheat it on low. One of the cool things about cast iron is it absorbs and retains heat really well. So you don't need to blast it just yet. Low to medium low is fine. So you're going to have to preheat it for a little while. It should literally start to smoke. And that's how you know it is hot enough to create the sear that you want. There's one other thing I forgot to tell you about this garlic pepper butter method. So butter absorbs flavor really well, which is why sometimes butter gets funky in the fridge. But we can use that to our advantage when you mix it with garlic and pepper and let it hang out for a bit. Because once this gets melted all in the pan and splashed all over the steak, I'm not going to eat the cloves of garlic that are in there. That would be way too strong. But the butter will have that flavor, and so it'll be a perfect balance. So the pan's pretty hot. It's not quite sizzling yet, so I'm going to turn the heat up from low to medium. While the pan is getting almost ready to go, I want to tell you now how I'm going to handle the flipping. Because once it's in there, I'm probably not going to post too many videos. I'm going to want to focus on what I'm doing here. There's a couple different schools of thought on this. So there's one school of thought that you quickly sear one side, then you sear the other side, and then you put it into a hot oven to finish. And I used that method for a number of years, and it works really well. Another method is to cook it on one side entirely, so 4 to 5 minutes on each side, just flip it once. That works fine as well, but I don't use either of those methods. Here's what I do now. The method I use now and that I like the best is called the constant flip method. So you flip it every 30 seconds, give or take, until it's done. It's a little bit more labor intensive, but it gives you the best sear. The other nice thing about it is that you're much less likely to overcook your steak. You know, if you leave it in the oven a few minutes too long, or if you leave it on one side a few minutes too long, you can take it beyond the medium rare that you're looking for. With constant flip, that's not like... Alright, look closely. You can see there's a little smoke coming off the pan. And that's exactly where we want it. In addition, you can see that the salt has pulled a lot of moisture out of the surface of the steak and it's really wet. So now we want to thoroughly dry it with a paper towel so that it sears rather than steams when it hits the heat. So we're going to do a little vegetable oil and we are off to the races. Push it down. Yeah. All right, first flip. That doesn't look like much, but that crust is going to get much more golden brown and delicious as we keep on flipping. You'll see. All right, it's about time to add that garlic and pepper butter. Remember that that fat cap from earlier, that strip of fat? I'm giving that a minute or two to sear so that fat gets really rendered and juicy and crispy and awesome. So you can see we got a really good crust and sear on this. Total cook time of 10 minutes on high heat. This is really important. Resist the urge to cut it right open. Let it rest. At least 5, 7, 10 minutes is best. The reason for that is all of those hot juices right now need to cool just a little bit so that when you cut the steak open, they don't run out. All right? So crack a beer and wait. Just to be extra decadent, I scraped out the remnants of that garlic and pepper butter, and I'm gonna spread it on top of the steak and let it melt in. Oh, by the way, I'm taking all those buttery, delicious steak drippings, and I'm gonna make mashed potatoes with them. Yes. The moral of the story is, if you're gonna have a cheat meal, make it yourself and do it right. I'm gonna put on an episode of Westworld and